Hello, hi. It is Monday, April 25th at 2016 at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and this is Marketing Live. I am your host, Amy Jorgensen. On today's live broadcast, we're talking about shared governance, a model where the academic senate has equal say in decisions made that impact the whole university. This is a tricky governance model work where you are trying to implement a search engine or any other enterprise software solution. In higher ed, this organizational structure is common and challenges many universities. Today, I am joined by Kevin McGlynn from the University of Oxford in the UK. He's with us to share his experience implementing large projects in a federated environment. We'll discuss how this can be done centrally or a less central department on campus. Both approaches have their merits, and both have been successful at Oxford for different reasons. Marketing Live is part of a Higher Ed Live network, offering viewers direct access to the best and brightest minds in education. Live broadcasts allow viewers to share knowledge and participate in discussions around the most important issues in the industry. Today's live viewing experience is powered by Maestro, a premier marketing tech platform for broadcasters. All episodes of Marketing Live are free and accessible in the video archives at higheredlive.com and in podcast format on iTunes. Today's episode is made possible by Funnelback. Funnelback is an on-site search engine that engages your students by uniting content from across the university, combining it with relevant promotions and exciting search tools such as course finders, expertise finders, and location-based searches. Thank you, Funnelback. So I'd like to say thank you to Kevin McGlynn for joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So Kevin McGlynn is an expert in online solutions and shares his passion for driving collaboration in the modern academic landscape. He is a technical project manager at the University of Oxford and joins us today from the UK. So welcome. So what time is it there in UK?
It is just after 6 o'clock now.
Fantastic. And do you want to share the great anecdote you told me before about your accent?
Yeah, if anyone's confused by the accent, I'm from Canada originally. So
I love it. You're such an international person. That's so great. You're a world traveler.
Well, the university here is very international with people from all over the world, so I'm just one of the many.
Fantastic. So we can actually say you are a world expert, which I love.
I'll put that on my CV.
So for those of you who are watching along, please do not hesitate to ask questions using hashtag HigherEdLive, all one word, on Twitter. I'll do my best to answer ask any questions to Kevin as they come in. So Kevin, you've been in technical roles in higher education for several years, both at Oxford and Cambridge. So tell me a little bit more about your journey and what has brought you to this project management role that you're in now.
Sure. I've always first of all, I studied computer science in Canada as a student and came up through various software development agencies and was very passionate about business efficiency through improving process or taking processes online and making them more accessible to customers. When I moved to the UK about 11 years ago now, I had an opportunity to work with a sector, higher education, that I was both passionate about and had worked with previously back in Canada. And so my first role with Cambridge was working with their HR systems, building a university-wide platform for promoting new roles and new funding up our new grants and these types of things, so recruitment basically. And that system's still in place today. That was just kind of a tip of the iceberg. So I really liked the impact of working at such a grand stage, such as Cambridge. I then moved to Oxford, where I started working with central IT teams and had various types of projects. Some of them very typical admin, central focus, but also working with the academics, where I got to engage on actual projects that touch the research and helped academics share it or engage their user base with it. So I had a real experience of kind of the commercial side and keeping the wheels turning of academia, but also the academia side, so the actual, the whole point of academia and higher education in general. Sorry, but yeah, so I'm good experience, and I'm still here. I'm now working in Department of Oncology, and I'm working on a project to increase collaboration across initially a narrow scope of oncology academics, but the plan is to broaden that to other departments and potentially across the entire institution, and there's already other institutions very much interested in the project we're working on.
That's awesome. So not only are you an expert when it comes to IT, you're also essentially supporting folks that are curing cancer. That's amazing.
That's kind of the written over the door as we walk in every day. You know, if you're having a bad day, just smile. You're helping cure cancer every single day. But I don't get right into the research myself, but I'm more at a meta level, and I'm helping the academics collaborate more and increase the likelihood of their ability to have impact with their research.
That's fantastic. So last year you worked on delivering enterprise level search capabilities to the University of Oxford. So let's start with that project. You know, what problem were you trying to solve? What was your approach to, you know, the solution? And did you work with a team on implementation and all that kind of good stuff? Can you tell me more about the implementation process?
Yeah, absolutely. It was on the surface, it may have seemed like a simple project. It was an expiring technology that we needed to either bring a new technology in to serve the needs of enterprise search, online search capabilities. So that means indexing all of the URLs of the university and providing multiple implementations of a front-end search tool. Where it gets tricky, especially at Oxford, is that it's not just the governance within Oxford is very federated, but also the web space itself. There are hundreds and hundreds of different domains within Oxford, and that was very challenging to, some of them, all of them have different rules and different governance just over the website itself, never mind the governing department or funding body involved or research group that, you know, built the website on a shoestring budget or some department. So the project was set up to replace the expiring technology, and there were some challenges time-wise because we needed to do this in a very short time frame, because it was either find a new technology or renew the expiring licenses on the old technology. So for various reasons, we ended up deciding on Funnelback search technology. What we needed to do was make sure that in a short time frame we were going to meet the needs of our existing clients, and then to a certain extent branch out and try and bring on more domains to start using our implementation of our search. So what we did was we gathered all the people that currently implement search across the university, and there were more than 40 implementations at the time, all doing different things in different ways with the underlying technology. And we sat them all down, gathered all their thoughts, and realized that all of them had different opinions on what was important, what their users were using it, what their user experience was. And sadly, because different departments have different priorities, we couldn't get everybody in the room at the same time, which I'm sure many people in federated environments can appreciate.
If I had $1.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how many, there's only a percentage of meeting requests you actually expect people to turn out for these types of things. But what we did was we said, all right, if we can't get answers to some of these important questions for all departments that will be impacted, we tried to go out and gather some data to represent the general view of what the users of this service would be. And then if we didn't have specific answers for all the departments or all the stakeholders, we could kind of make some estimates based on our general findings across the board. And this meant an actual public survey for users that came into the university and were using our search tools. And there was all sorts of questions about likelihood of finding results and all that kind of good stuff. And so between the actual stakeholder input and the front-end user input, we got a very clear picture as to what some of the priorities were. And so this was our approach to progress on the project when it came to answering the questions of governing committees and stakeholders en masse and justifying IT budgets and that sort of thing. And so then we decided we did want to move ahead based on the impact from these. We did want to move ahead with a new technology. Funnelback was technology of choice, which was good for various reasons. I mean, their functionality was exactly what we wanted, and then some. But because of the short deadline, we needed someone that could really treat us as a, let's just say, address our high-impact support needs or short-term support needs, which they did in spades. They were on site whenever we needed them and helped us hit this deadline of expiring licenses. So what we then, so the way we did it, and to kind of answer your original question, is the process really focused on getting a like-for-like replacement of the old tool, making sure all the customers weren't affected, but we wanted to make sure we had a technology that allowed us to expand the scope of the service to include not just more implementations, but also some of the features that we've been holding off on, or that we've been putting on a back shelf kind of for a rainy day type of thing that a lot of our clients were starting to request. So and that's where the project's at now. As I mentioned, I've moved into Department of Oncology, and I've handed this off, and they're still making strides with it in the central IT group.
That's excellent. So when you were developing the project, you talked about how it's hard to get everybody in the same room and focus on the priorities of what you all wanted to do. So what would you say, like how were you able to achieve some wins with that? So what did you find that was successful to get everybody on board and making sure that all the goals were similar or at least identified?
Yeah. Well, first of all, tea and cake helped getting bodies into the seats in our initial meetings.
Did you say tea and cake?
Tea and cake.
I love it. I love it. Okay, good.
Food will be served at this meeting. No, but once we had a core people, and it became very early, obvious very early on who was passionate about this particular technology, or how their web presence used this technology, and so they very much became champions of the service and our go-to people whenever we wanted to test something or get their opinion on a potential rollout of a tool or addition of a tool to our plan or a feature to our plan. So this became our core group, but we did have a wider group, which was everyone that would be impacted by the technology. And again, we published the results of our 500 plus opinions in our public survey that we gathered. We published the results of the people who did attend our stakeholder meetings and asked for feedback, proposed it based on the feedback gathered in those multiple arenas. We published our plan. We had a few questions about it, mainly people saying, you know, I read this, but I'm still not 100% sure how it's going to affect me, you know, when you flick the switch to go with this new technology. And so we had that moved a bit more into the implementation phase. So once we had sign off from our user group, we moved again into this more operations and implementation, and had a very high-level user manual, a more detailed user manual. We tried to keep in regular communication with the group leading up to the date, and then we're very quick to publish any feedback after go live about what we were doing and how things were progressing. And if there were any problems, we quickly discussed them with our user group. And actually, I will say Funnelback was very helpful in assisting us with some of the comms or answers to some of the comms. So it wasn't just the tech piece, but they wanted to see the project succeed. I mean, for mutual reasons. So
So can you talk to me a little bit more about some of the features that you were able to leverage within the Funnelback product to be able to target your specific audiences? So, you know, with the diverse different groups, I mean, I know at the University of Virginia, it's like, okay, we have to sometimes communicate to students, and sometimes it's undergrad and sometimes it's graduate, and then there's diverse needs between there. And then sometimes you need to communicate with alumni versus, you know, potential donors versus, you know, so how were you able to leverage this tool to make sure that everyone was meeting their goals?
Well, that's a good question. So, I mean, the focus initially was on this like for like, make sure it was still functioning in the way it always had been,
Yeah.
Or at least the way it had known to be, and then use that as the platform to add further functionality. We very much took it in a piloted approach. So there was specific needs, and some groups determined them to be more important than others. So one that jumps out is authenticated data or content, any type of content. So basically secure content we don't want the masses seeing, but we want members of the university community, in particular potentially members of a department, to be able to go into a specific implementation, do a search, and find secure content, whereas someone from the public would go and do that same search and not find that particular piece. And so we piloted that with one or two groups that were very interested in that technology. For various reasons, it was something put on the back burner for years, but a responsive team at Funnelback and the technology being a bit more accessible for not just the people implementing it from the central IT, but also the pickup of it, of our kind of stakeholder tech contacts being able to implement this on their end was just empowered us to be able to do these tests or these kind of pilot runs a lot easier. And so these became kind of, once there was some success in the space and we were able to say, yes, we're connecting to this repository of secure content and it's working, and that kind of became an example of how to implement this type of functionality in other departments. And so people started getting interested, and if someone came in requesting this functionality, we could just point them to all the documentation of the success of our pilots and even put them in contact with the stakeholders of pilots. I mean, of course, there were hiccups along the way, and those were documented. And again, hopefully those would help future clients looking to use the service as well. So
that's great. And I love how you talked about how they were there during the process and putting it together, because I mean that makes it so much easier, making sure that you're able to implement it correctly. And
well, yeah, and I mean it's nice to work with a company that are keen to see you succeed in your space. And I mean, you can get this huge conglomerate type companies where you're just another account, but we definitely got the feel that they were at the end of the phone call or end of the phone to help us if we had any problems on any element of the project.
Fantastic. So you also had experience implementing a publication data platform, so Vivo. So how was that experience different?
It certainly was different. So I mentioned I'm in the Department of Oncology, which I mentioned just because I kind of was mentioning the hub of the previous project as central, and this is very much the opposite of that now. So I'm in a department. I'm working with a team. My colleague on this, Dr. Claire Bloomfield in particular, we're very passionate about using network analysis to assess academic communities, in particular collaboration within an academic community. And so that's the base of my project. What Vivo is for our project is a way of gathering data, information that we may have about academics. So publication data, grant data, all these types of things that are publicly accessible, but we want to gather them together, make sure it's a good representation of the academics we're looking at, and then potentially do some analysis and potentially get some suggestions on the health of collaborations within a particular network, or who might benefit from working with who, or who might be best served to stand on a particular committee, or who might be best situated to work with the business sectors. So that's the end game. And so the reason why I highlight that as away from the center is, unlike an online search tool, which every website out there, especially within the university, certainly needs this to a certain extent. This is a tool that is very new, and the business need for it isn't obvious, or at least to your average academic, certainly your average department across the university, perhaps particularly a university as old as Oxford. So what we found is a group that is very interested in the potential outputs of this. It's the CR UK Oxford Centre, which is Cancer Research UK. It's centered in the Department of Oncology, but it's very interdisciplinary, kind of a virtual group that spans multiple departments. But the key to this, and why we're very interested in doing this project in this setting, is it's a closed, small to medium-sized group of academics where we can deploy this project, kind of ring-fence the academics and say, this is the network we're going to look at, this is the group we're going to assess the health of the collaborations on. And so we realize that if we tried to do something like this, a brand spanking new technology, base it in the center, publicize it to the masses as a new up-and-coming project, the outputs of which will be X, Y, and Z, we'd be A to Z with requests and committees chiming in with their the project really would, well, it wouldn't die, because if it had a good need, then it would go through all those hoops. But I think for this particular project, especially so because it's so innovative, we're keen to get away from that, build up a pilot, kind of like I mentioned the one department that piloted the secure content with the Funnelback solution. We've gone to the CR UK Oxford Centre, we're piloting this technology within this closed group, and then we're going to open it up. We're going to say, look what we've done in the cancer group. We've got these metrics coming out of this. We've got this excellent network analysis tool that we've built. Yes, these are our assumptions. Yes, these are the questions we went into this trying to answer. Is anyone else interested in this space? Now, CR UK is actually a UK funding body, and so we're actually going to promote the output of what we're doing with the funding body as well, and over cocktails and back I think there's already some interest.
More food.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, maybe after this podcast, there'll be even more interest in it. But so there is interest in the space, but it seems a bit too broad and vague to come out with saying this is the university's, proven solution moving forward that all departments can take up and adopt. But that said, we do realize that that's the end game. I mean, we have a fixed budget that can support the technology demands of our group, but if it was to ramp up, we need something that's scalable, and that's very much where Vivo's come in. So rather than having our tool work on collaborations from Excel spreadsheets, we have a proper database with Vivo is known for being an academic profiling tool. So just as that sounds, so picture Professor X and their publications and their affiliations and such. That is kind of the easy win application that sits on top of what we consider the real power of Vivo, is the ontology or the schema that defines how relationships work in a higher education environment. And so we're using that ability to aggregate data from multiple sources and the schema that defines relationships and collaborations is what we're interested in around the university. And we're interested in, now again, we're using, it's a big solution for our relatively small project, but the aim is to ramp up for a university-wide solution. And so this fits the bill well as a platform that we could hand off to a central IT to kind of, it would be something that would drive the base of our project, but also a university-wide implementation. So we've had to consider some of the things of if we did ramp up, but we've had a certain amount of freedom going out into the outskirts of the university, I might say, although, yeah, Department of Oncology, there's a lot going on here, so I won't that word outskirts, but we've had a lot more freedom being able to do this in a much more closed environment. And so, yeah, we're reaping the benefits as a result. The project's moving much faster than it would if we had more people to appease.
But I think that's brilliant. You start off with, here's an audience that we know are willing to take risks and try new technology, and here's a new product that we can potentially work on and test with them, and then once it is successful, you're able to use that as justification for other areas being able to implement it. So instead of saying like, you should do it this way because this is what we think you should do, it's you should do it this way because look at how well it's worked with other areas. And if anything, instead of it being your opinion, they end up becoming the advocate for this program of, you've got to try this, look at how well it worked for us. And that's so much more effective. They've become like your brand ambassador, your cheerleader.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another angle we took along those lines of trying to find champions of our tool are aligning ourselves with, well, just to backtrack for a moment, one of our key things was getting data for this project. So we need to know who's doing what. And we can go to external sources, but that didn't quite seem aligned with the type of tool we're dealing with. And so we use centrally provided publication and grant data. Well, publication data to date, grant data is forthcoming. But so and in Oxford's, probably not in medical sciences, but in some of the other departments, it's very much a tedious task to provide details on academics' research. Not for all, but for some. And it's more around governmental requirements, which I think aren't quite the same in the States, but around reporting on what you're doing, and funding bodies use this information quite a lot as well. So it's very important for the process, but it's considered a tedious task. Very much you must report on what you're doing, your shiny apple. Which, well, I'm trivializing it, but that's the underlying tone to it. So what we thought was, if this data is collected through Central University, why don't we use that data? And we're doing that in our small project for our small network. Why don't we use that data and then produce these outputs and say, look what going through that arduous task of providing all that data has provided you. It's a network view of you and your colleagues and the space you work in, and giving you some suggestions on collaboration. So there's benefits. And so that then becomes not just our academic community championing our service, but also the central IT group or the central research services group that are hosting this data platform. I mean, it's early days now, but the benefits are there. They see this as a way to get some of the trickier departments to comply to some of the reporting requirements. Not just you have to do this, but look at some of the benefits of complying. So these are some of the synergies that we're trying to work out. Our project helping others that are obviously helping us. So that's another approach I would say has definitely worked with our project.
I love that. Anything you can do to make other people's jobs easier is,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So back with the Funnelback, because I think this sounds like such a cool tool. How were you able, can you explain more about how you started out with a search engine on one area? You talked about piloting it and then being able to expand it out everywhere?
Yeah. Well, it was so. I mean, I don't want to get into the technical details too much, but yeah. So we were particular departments. So you mean around the secure contents example that I highlighted? Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So like, how do you like start off? Yeah.
In many ways, I mean, with the Vivo and the network analysis project in oncology or CRUK, the benefit or the reason why it's working so well is because I found an ideal pilot scenario, and really that's what drove this particular functionality being added to the suite that the service provided, was finding a client that was particularly keen on that technology, setting up a pilot where we would, closed kind of scenario, and it didn't impact the greater service to the other clients. And so there were certainly some hiccups, and we worked through some of the expectations of the client, their ability to cater content to specific groups, which had more to do with how their content was collected than the functionality of Funnelback. But yeah, there was a lot of back and forth. There was even times where we had Funnelback speaking with the department directly, or at least everyone in the room together, which says a lot about our trust in Funnelback. But no, it worked out very well. I mean, it allowed us the freedom and the space to focus in on what they needed. Yes, there were hiccups, as I mentioned, but again, we had a pilot to work through them rather than trying to implement something and then those hiccups being multiplied by 40, 50 different end users. That would have been a nightmare.
Yeah.
But again, once you have a success within a particular client or a particular pilot, then you have a champion of the service, and they're keen to promote your service to other people or other departments or their colleagues. And yeah, so it's a win-win for us.
Very cool. So what was your favorite, most unique feature of the Funnelback search engine, and then also Vivo? So it's just like something unique. You're like, that's really cool. We've got to use this.
I must say the federated nature of Oxford had to trip over a little bit with Funnelback, just because our data comes from so many different places, so many services. So finding a common ground that everything kind of limited some of the functionality that we could do. However, some of the demos and some of the things that we're working, this solution is certainly working towards, were very interesting. So on the fly, being able to have search results on a map, or have directions if you're looking for, say, a lecture within a certain place. You could have map overlays of the city and the building and where you want to go. Oh my gosh, students would love that.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. And it's all possible. It's all just how you index the data. But again, we're not quite there, and it's more of the university's fault than, well, certainly the university's fault in how we index that type of data across the board. Certain departments are a lot better than others, computer science and the likely candidates. But yeah, no, some of it almost bleeding edge a little bit. It's very interesting. And they have a slew of clients in the UK in the higher education sector, well, globally, really, Australia and North America. But some of our competitors, I say, higher education colleagues in the UK are using their tool is very interesting.
That's so
In fact,
cool.
they really promoted feedback, not just between us and them, but also some of their clients, and they got their client group, groups of their clients together on a regular basis. And I became friends with people that implemented the tool at Cambridge, University of Cambridge, and yeah, there was growing praise back and forth, and also hints and tips and that we were keen to share. And Cambridge in particular had a lot of the technical hurdles that we had to address, and so yeah, it was a really open environment that being a customer of theirs is.
And hopefully we get together and have cake as well.
What's that?
And hopefully we get together and get cake as well, right?
Yes.
Love it. So summarizing everything up, what would you say are some of your biggest suggestions and tips to universities for implementing new software as a project manager to make sure it's successful in the long run?
Definitely consider all your stakeholders. Make sure you're addressing all, if you can't address immediately all the needs of all your stakeholders, lay out a plan that at least mentions them or considers them or lets them know that their voice is being heard. If it's something existing, an existing solution that people are familiar with, then you need to do I'm biased based on my own experience, but a solution from the center up where it's important to be the official brand of the university or the official solution sponsored by the central university. Then do that. Base yourself from the middle. Broadcast out all plans and implementation dates as the official word, the official plan from the university. When it comes to newer technology where the business need isn't quite well defined, be it a new functionality of an existing platform or a completely new tool in itself, then find a group, find a little place where you can go away and hide and work on the feature set and interact with a smaller community of users to get a better understanding of what the tool needs to be and what the needs of the a subset, but of the community is. Then you have a leg to stand on, and you can branch out to a wider audience. So that's certainly the lessons I've learned over these last two projects.
That's fantastic. I love how it's like you got to watch out for the big king that's coming down, like, oh, you have to do it this way, and then you're essentially a knight that's preparing to go in and like an IT battle. I'm going to take down and show you this. Look at my new sword.
Well, I'm sure every IT entity within a higher education has always dealt with the response from departments of okay, it's just another scheduled downtime or just another email but when you need to engage them, engage the community, and you really want their feedback, and the project is relying on their feedback to make sure that it's steering in the right direction, you need to get a bit more creative with how to gather that feedback. And if it's going away and hiding in a small space with a circle of like-minded individuals, that might be the first step. Or if it's giving free tea and biscuits and or sandwiches to the masses just to coax them in to get their opinions, then be creative.
Very cool. I absolutely love it. And I'm really excited to go learn more about Funnelback and Vivo and check out those products and how we can potentially use them over here at our university. Yeah.
Chances are I wouldn't be surprised if someone's dabbling in Vivo one way or another. So, yeah, absolutely. Go away. If you have any questions, by all means.
We'll have to do another show and ask more details. Wonderful. Wanda, thank you so much for joining us today. I've really enjoyed getting all your tips and all your resources. So,
same. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been great.
So you are the world expert and, the guy to go to for tea and cake. I love it.
All right.
Great. So I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in today. As always, you can see all of our videos on higheredlive.com. And a big thank you to our program sponsor, Funnelback, which I'm going to have to go check out now and see how I can get it at our university over here in the States. So please make sure to tune in later on and have a great day.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks.